Welcome to the podcast. It's the worst territory in the world. Personalities, history, and other stories. We know you're craving for more knowledge. Let the champions get their glory. It's the worst territory in the world.
Welcome in, everybody. It is the best time of the week to talk about possibly the worst territory in the world. I'm Gabe Miller, sitting here with Chris Goff. Chris, welcome in. We have an exciting podcast today, and we'll talk about our guests in just a minute. But Chris, how is the last couple of weeks been treating you?
Oh, it's been great. It's been great. I got to be honest. Our guest today is one that I've looked forward to for a while. I do want to thank Gil Rogers for the assist on this.
Yes,
he did hook me up with this guy in a long indirect way. But anyway, our guest is going to be one of our most flamboyant guests we ever have, and I wish that he was a guest on here every week because I could probably talk with this guy for many, many hours. And I'm looking for. I have sent this interview to multiple people around the world that I knew would really enjoy the raw cut of it, and they have. So I'm looking forward to everyone hearing it.
Pulling the veil back a little bit. Usually, when you do these interviews, because our schedules don't line up, I usually just throw to the interview and then I'll listen to it as you produce it and all that kind of stuff. I listened to this interview because you asked me to before we went on here, and there is not enough words in the English dictionary that can encompass exactly what this gentleman talks about, the way he talks about it. It is the best interview. And you've done a lot of really great interviews, but I gotta say, even you, I think, were taken aback a little bit a couple times during the interview. You were just like, wow, this is flying off the rails a little bit.
So I don't know why I'm kayfabe.
Yeah, I don't know why we're kayfabe
title, but I wanted to give him a majestic. I'm using that word a lot today. A majestic introduction. But we're talking about Rip Rogers, and Rip Rogers only wrestled in the Central States in 1987. He talks about how he had some matches in '83, but '87 is when he was here full time in the Central States. And of course, that's an era that is not talked about a lot because those are the dying days of the area. Yep. But I'm telling you what, Rip Rogers, I've seen shoot interviews with him, and I've never met the man. I talked to him on a call. We set this up. When I called him, he just started going as soon as I started on the phone with him. And then I explained to him, like, okay, well, let's get started. And he's like, well, why didn't you just record this? I've been up and talking for a long time, and he's just that kind of guy. He really doesn't care what people think about him. Nope. And as you will find out, he is the most real, most over guy you'll ever meet in your life, and he'll tell you that. And I'll tell you what, Rip Rogers was a character. I wish I knew him before I met him, because he would. I'd just be loving to sit and hear stories from him all day long. But he definitely has some strong thoughts on Central States, but also has strong thoughts on today's product, and you can imagine what those are.
Yeah. And, I think if you've been in, quote unquote, inside the wrestling bubble for any extended period of time, and you bring this up in the interview, so I won't go too deep into it, but Rip Rogers, not only is he known for his Twitter presence, boy, that's a follow, but he is one of the best trainers. If you know anything about a lot of the people that have made it, quote unquote, Rip Rogers had a hand in training him. And so Rip Rogers is definitely one of those guys that has been around the business forever, seen it, done it. And I love the way he describes his training, how he trains people. It's wonderful in this interview. But Rip is responsible for a lot of superstars.
He is. If you really think about it, who are the trainers of the last, let's say, since the Attitude Era on? You had Dr. Tom Pritchard, who we talk about as well, who I consider, he's a personal friend of mine, and I consider him to be the trainer of the stars, because not only is he a great trainer, and as Rip says, he can explain everything perfectly to guys. He started off as a fan, as a photographer, like many guys did in his era, and then became a wrestler, then trainer. But he had to deal with the growing huge business of WWF, WWE, and he had to live within that corporate life for a long time, and I give him tons of credit just for that. But then you have Rip Rogers, who was down in OVW, who of course was the feeding ground sort of after Tom Pritchard,
Right.
and that was, and then you got Bill DeMott. I mean, there's not a ton of like singular names, like even the power plant. There wasn't, there was the sergeant, there was Sarge, but there's not a ton of guys, and Rip Rogers is always put over by the most revered people in wrestling. So yeah, and he obviously loves Dr. Tom, and I'm sure if I called Dr. Tom, he would tell me a lot of great stories about Rip Rogers. But
I really
I will say this. I wanted to let everybody know right now. If you have this interview playing in a workplace or around small children that you don't want to hear sexual exploits and cursing, then I suggest, and I try to put this in the notes when I post these actual shows, not suitable for children if there's a lot of cursing or whatever. But this is definitely not one you want to play around them. I just make sure that you do not have it around them if you don't want them to hear this.
I've never heard the F word so many times in a 35-40 minute span.
Freaking Leonardo da Vinci of cursing. I mean, this guy could take the F word, and I fancy myself as a fantastic cursor. Right. I took a lesson from him in Rip Rogers cursing school. And man, I think we all learned a lot on this show.
Oh man, I can't wait to get to the interview. But before we do, let's talk about a few news and notes. So coming out in the last couple of weeks, we have the big wide-eyed Tony Khan announcement. Mm-hmm. Can't stand when he makes an announcement, Chris, because his eyes are really wide.
Another huge announcement. It's been another week, so let's have the ratings went down 100 grand in viewers. So let's have a major announcement.
And then, but I'm so glad it wasn't in front of people, because when he's in front of people, he gets even more amped. Mm-hmm. And his eyes are really wide, and he's just like, hey, and he gets nervous. But anyways, so they make the announcement that they are going to run a show for the first time, I believe, in 31 years, Chris. In Wembley Stadium.
Yeah. I mean, it was 92 it? I mean, is that it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And 92, obviously, SummerSlam 92, one of my good friends, that's his favorite pay-per-view. I think just because it was in a different country and the majesty, and there were some really good matches and moments in that show.
Great matches and moments.
We know that Tony Khan is an old school fan, and obviously running Wembley and his connections with the sports leagues over there, soccer. He's going to have connections to get maybe a good rate on that building. So, hey, it's a cool thing to say that you did. I think it's Tony Khan has he has the means and the money to do some cool stuff at the very least. Now, the execution may not be what people want, but he can do some cool things, and this will be cool. But as we were just talking, Gabe, and a lot of people are, what is going to be put on paper that is going to be a huge draw in Wembley Stadium? Let's take out all the outsiders right now that are not working currently. I mean, if you just take the roster you have right now, Gabe, and you're like, okay, let's put a card together of people that are currently on the staff that are no one that's suspended or anything like that. Okay. What is a match that you think could do well there?
Like draw a big house?
What is the main event of a Wembley Stadium where you're hoping to draw, I don't know, 50,000+ people? I mean, I've heard obviously MJF versus blank. I've heard MJF versus Goldberg. I've heard, of course, we'll talk about all the Punk stuff in a minute. But I mean, if you just had to go off, people that are currently on the show, that's not a special person. I guess what I'm getting at is, don't they need like a special person to pop?
I was just about to say, to your point, I'm literally racking my brain, and there is not a. So I'm going to double in this. There's not a match I can think of current active stars that would draw a really big house. However, because of the venue, because of the history, because of the United Kingdom, do they need that big name to draw? Because apparently already, with no matches announced, they've had inquiry on 50,000 tickets. So are they going to rest on their laurels? I mean, obviously you're right, Chris. We should bring, I think Goldberg is whatever, but you should bring in something. It should be bigger than life. This whole card should be stacked from top to bottom with the best representation of AEW. Right? But is he going to do that? I don't know.
I don't know. Like, no, you're right. Just the candidness of having this show there and having that kind of crowd, having a UK crowd. The old story was when I worked at WWE, obviously, if it's the business is down in the United States, go across the pond and you'll start drawing well. And that's what Vince did a ton back then. He always had British Bulldog to put on the top of the card now. Like, who else, they don't really have a super well-known British guy like the Bulldog back in the day that would be able to do that. So, at this point, you're right. Just the gimmick of having it in England in Wembley Stadium is enough to put in. I mean, there'll be people in England that want to see a show. So there's going to be people there. But what are they going to put? It's a pay-per-view. It's all in. So what are they going to put to make it a memorable show for anyone that's not actually there just to see a show for the first time in England in 32 years or whatever? I don't know. MJF would have to be it. I mean, I would assume Jericho or the EVPs would put themselves in a position at the top. So I guess one of the things was Ospreay versus Kenny Omega.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was about to say. I was like, that's the only match I can think of where they could put it on because of the renown from their New Japan show and Ospreay being a hometown guy. That is a really good call. But it's not like it's not gonna sell out Wembley, but do they need to? I mean, it's kind of sad because he could just flub this show and it's gonna get all this publicity because, again, of where it is and everything. So maybe the pressure really isn't on him to bring someone like Punk back. I mean, because obviously, so we'll get into it now. Obviously, the choice, the soup du jour, I think at least at the top of the card would have to either involve the EVPs and Punk in some regard.
Yeah, no. I mean, I've been playing around with my friends saying, it should be Punk, a returning Ace Steel, and FTR versus the Bucks, Omega, and I don't know, to throw somebody else in there.
Nakagawa or whatever.
Yeah, somebody that they would consider a good friend that they want in that spot, but not Brandon Cutler, but somebody else.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be a huge match for a one-off. I mean, let's face it, AEW is known for their one-offs, or even if they actually build somebody to a point, then it's immediately dropped. So everything with AEW becomes, let's just do a crazy, fantasy booking, and let's book some one-off match, that has really no build or anything, but has everything for the crazy fans. They want to see this never before seen match or whatever, or maybe a match that's been seen before but not on quite the stage. I don't know. The Punk thing makes sense. I don't know how much smoke there is, how much fire there is with the smoke from CM Punk wanting to come back. You start hearing these rumors that he's talking with Tony, he's willing to work with anybody. Jericho says he wants to work with Punk. I'm sure he does. And then Dave starts sort of detracting from Punk coming back a little bit, saying how he must apologize and all this stuff. So then, of course, you're like, well, if Dave is writing that, there obviously has to be more fire to this because he's not gonna really be so negative about it if he didn't think it was a good possibility, which I don't know why it shouldn't be, because any businessman can look at it and be like, well, I'm paying this guy. I know you guys hate him, but I'm paying this guy 7 figures to do nothing. So this would be a really good time for him to come, right? So
I mean,
who knows?
but I mean, to that point though, that would mean the EVPs, because there's all ego involved in this. Let's just call a spade a spade. Punk has an ego. If you're in this business and you're one of the top guys, you have an ego. I don't care who you are. I don't care how real you are. Everyone's got ego to some degree, right?
Sure.
So for the EVPs to look at Tony Khan and say, he's the one that can help us draw the amount that we need to fill Wembley, because he's that big of a name, they would have to admit that Punk is that big of a draw. And I think that hurts more to them than the potential backstage altercations. And it's because you have to take yourself down a peg, and Omega has to admit that he can't draw that crowd the way Punk could. I mean, putting Punk in that card is going to be the difference, I believe, between 10 to 20,000 tickets, and depending on where they put.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about Punk has not been on TV now for a while. He hasn't been in England for God knows how many years.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure he was on loops, obviously, back in the early 2010s.
Right.
So I'm sure he was there. But
right.
we're talking at least probably a decade since he's been to England to wrestle in a pro wrestling match. So, that in itself is huge. Look, I've gone over this a million times with my friends, just talking about scenarios. Like, what is Punk going to do if he comes back? Let's say that Tony Khan's like, okay, everyone play nice. Punk's coming back. Maybe he makes the rule that they have an angle out of this or they don't. Me personally, I think they botched this so poorly. Like the WWE would have done, the WWE, especially when Vince was in his prime, like 20 years ago, he would have gotten pissed off at everyone involved that they had a fight or something, but he would have turned it into a shoot angle on TV. He would have had Punk, even if Punk was torn muscle, he would still be on television, doing promos from his house, cutting promos, saying how he's great or horrible, whichever way, whoever you want to name the babyface heel in this scenario, it's going to be split depending on your age and what you like anyway. But I just think that they've lost all the momentum to the mainstream. All of us that pay attention to all the backstage stuff, we of course know what's going on, and we think it would be cool in any capacity, I would think, unless you're just a complete AEW loyalist who just thinks Punk is there to take down your company, even though he did some of the best business the company's ever done, and it's only gone downhill since he left, except for an occasional pop-up here and there. But just consistency-wise, Punk was the last person that was there on top that was still drawing what they wanted to draw on a consistent basis. So I don't know, man. I think Punk coming back would be good, but can he really, really survive in that environment the way it is currently set up, even if him and Tony come to some kind of agreement? I mean, he obviously speaks his mind. He might not do what he did at a press scrum again, but at the same time, like he doesn't like to play a fool to anybody there. He's not going to put up with this crap. I mean, I still don't understand how Tony did not strip these like stupid superficial titles over these guys that are currently working on this staff. I mean, it's so dumb at this point that you have, the Bucks and Omega, who are not the biggest stars in this company, throwing their weight around because of their title. It's just a conflict of interest at this point, and they should be stripped. And I'm not saying they should lose their jobs or anything at this point. No. They should just not be in charge of telling Tony who can and can't come in and who they will and won't work with. I mean, that's just.
I mean, how is it not looked at as a conflict of interest by anybody else? You know what I mean? It screams, nepotism or whatever to the highest degree. It's like, so what, Tony? These guys can do no wrong. So just by that, I mean, he's going to divide the locker room even more than it probably already is. The bottom line is this: again, just completely straight up honest. We know people who are in the circle, so to speak. I don't understand why anybody can't just make some damn money. For the love of God, guys, like get together, put your BS at the, I'm going Rip Rogers here. Put your BS at the door and just work together. Make some money. If you want to make AEW the best possible thing it can be, put all, so the scrum happens. So you don't like this guy. Nobody likes Chris Jericho behind the scenes, but people are still willing to work with him. You know what I mean? So just put it all behind you and make some damn money. It just seems like a no-brainer to me, but I don't understand why it hasn't happened sooner.
It has it. I don't know when they're in Chicago. Apparently, they're saying the rumor is that Punk might return at their next Chicago show. I know this Wembley Stadium show is not booked until the 27th of August, so we'll see what happens between now and then. Like I said, they have lost a ton of momentum or time, I guess, if anything, to promote Punk as either the top heel or top babyface or however you want to position him and whoever else is on the other side. If it's going to be like I said, who does Punk even in an 8-man or 6-man tag of some sort? It makes sense for Punk to be with the EVPs. In a one-on-one match, the only match that's even like credible would be, I guess, Omega versus Punk. But even that really doesn't have a lot behind it because it was really Ace Steel versus Omega in the fight. So I mean, I don't know. To me, it's like I would be most interested in. Even a tag with Ace and Punk versus the Young Bucks, or a 6-man with, Omega on the other side and, somebody on Ace and Punk's side. I don't know. But I know FTR are their friends. So, I don't know how you make that not an 8-man. But anyway, I think there's ways to make this interesting, but really long term, I think that was the problem I had from the beginning is like, okay, let's make some money out of this. Where's the money? Is it Punk Omega? Is that a big money
Yeah.
match?
Yeah.
Maybe one off. I don't know. Omega has lost so much steam since he started hot with the company. You know, these EVPs, I'll give this to them. They were able to do some really cool stuff on an independent level that got them this job with Tony Khan to start this company and to name the company after their clique and all this stuff. They had it going on then.
Yeah.
They don't now. I mean,
Right.
they've been totally neutralized with, you know, just time, just oversaturation, people coming in that have more experience and are better than them. You know, I think we've said this in the beginning. Even if you like the Young Bucks, you have to agree they're pretty one-trick ponies. You know what you're getting. They're going.
Yeah.
That's not something that you're going to be able to sit there and be like, well, they're so multi-dimensional and layered. No, they're not. Their promos and their angles are like sophomoric and like stupid. I don't like it. I'm not saying they're not incredibly good at their in-ring. I don't know, just they're flipping, they're flopping. They can do stuff in a match that is pretty cool to see for someone that's walking by a television like, oh my gosh, that's cool. But as far as like them having like a real huge money angle with a Punk, somebody of that caliber, can you imagine like Punk versus the Bucks or Omega on a mic off? I mean, that would be like, it'd be like Babe Ruth versus a rookie. You know, it'd be so weak. And like Punk would have to drop to their level to even make it somewhat like even. And it would be, I don't know. Like, that's why when they were going to go with Punk MJF before all this crap happened, that would have been such good stuff. And now they don't get that anymore because of what happened.
Yeah. Yeah. So time will tell. Time will tell what they're going to cook up for Wembley. Much like anything else in AEW, I don't have a lot of faith in things being organized correctly. Or booked properly, so to speak. So it'll be interesting to see what develops. I hope they can all come to the table. I hope they can make some money. The big money would be, honestly, to get Punk back. Real quick, would you get Goldberg if you were Tony Khan?
Well, the
answer is no.
I know what you're saying about Goldberg. Like, he's obviously over the hill but I mean, if it's Saudi Arabians will obviously pay Goldberg millions of dollars to give anyone a spear. It doesn't matter. Yeah. I'm still saying, I did a news report today for a radio station, and it was basically, I was talking about Mike Tyson and like how he says he still wants to fight Evander Holyfield, and the Saudi Arabians have offered him a ton of money to have another fight with Evander. Now, that's sort of how I started watching Bellator, is like, oh, I want to watch these like old guys that I've heard of fight each other at this point, because it's like a car crash. I mean, even though I know it's not top, they're not in their prime, they're way past their prime, but I still want to see what happens when they're in the ring. So if you told me MJF Goldberg, do I think it's going to be a 5-star classic? Hell no.
No.
Would I want to watch it just to see it, much like I watched the Heroes of Wrestling pay-per-view back in 1999 or whatever? Yes, I would watch it for that reason, just because I want to see what happens with MJF and Goldberg in 2023. I mean, it would be something like that would be interesting. That is a far, far cry from what we're talking about with Punk coming in and even Punk MJF at this point would be just out of the blue. Even if it was a cold match, just leading up to it several weeks, them on the mic or whatever, that MJF could cut a great heel promo on how Punk tried to destroy the company he's building, and Punk coming back with like some good ammo. Just that alone would be great. But I don't know. Has Tony ever? I was just talking about this the other day. What happened to Wardlow? Like, Wardlow was he was the next Goldberg.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden he's like. And even if he's hurt or out of action for whatever reason, like, it's just these people just get dropped so consistently. It's like every time somebody gets to a point, you're like, I think he's going to be the breakout star. I don't see them for weeks or hear about them for months. It's weird.
Like this, I mean, Hook was all the rage for like literally 4 months. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, this guy again? Because he did nothing with it. They're like, he's undefeated. He's coming out, choking out these people. He doesn't care. Crowd was super into this guy. And now, I mean, they're still kind of in there. But what have they done with him? He's facing what? Lee Moriarty? And you know what I mean? It means nothing.
I laugh when these people rip on WWE, how they don't know how to use people. And there's great, people rip on, they don't use LA Knight right? And I'm like, okay, you could say that, and I'm not saying you're wrong. Oh, they don't use Bray Wyatt right. You could say that. You're not going to. But how can these same people just say AEW is great? Because AEW, every time someone gets a freaking fire lit under their ass and they're like huge, like, and even the people that they said were going to be stars are the people that anyone in the industry would look at them and say, like, this guy is going to be a huge star. Whether it's Wardlow, Will Hobbs, Ricky Starks, like Hook, not based on size, but more just his unspoken charisma. How can you look at these people that they have had in their hand, the crowd was eating it up, and then all of a sudden it just goes away? Yeah. So how can I not believe that's the EVPs or Jericho putting the fire out just because they're trying to save their own ass? I mean, yeah. I've seen that at WWE 20 years ago. I'm not going to say who it was, but it was there were people that were getting really on fire, RVD being one of them, and people that did not want them to be on fire anymore. So they basically got put out really quick. Yeah. So, it happens all the time, but it just happens very consistently in AEW.
I would not put Goldberg on that card. I think it does something for the tickets. I think people would tune in, like you said, to see the car crash. But I think it's just, if you want to separate yourself from the competition, they can't do that gimmicky type of stuff. They can't bring in, they already have their old timer with Sting. I would wrap up Sting's career at Wembley, honestly, because he's talked about
cool. Yeah.
He's talked about retiring. I would wrap up Sting's career at Wembley, give him a nice send off and all that kind of stuff. But they don't need like a Goldberg. They don't need like Hogan coming out and dropping a leg on anybody, or whatever.
Dude, here's the problem: is that crowd of people that you're referring to, they're gone. Most of them are gone. The only ones you can even talk about now from that era that would really consider doing it would be Sting, who's obviously under contract, Goldberg, who I think still wants to have another goodbye match, and then Punk. And then who else is out there that is like a huge game changer? I mean, that used to be the most fun part of like building into Mania back in the day. 20 years ago, there were so many people still in the cards, whether it was, Macho Man was still alive, Roddy Piper, even though these guys were limited physically to an extent, they were still doing it and able to do it and still come in and pop the house. Nowadays, you're to the next level, which is like sort of attitude era guys. And even those guys are getting too old. So now you're getting to the 2000s guys. And as we know, outside of John Cena, Batista, Randy Orton, some of these guys that were young 20, 25 years ago when I was there and are still sort of kicking it around, gone are the Hall and Nash and Jake the Snake and these guys that could have been like a big name back in the late 90s, but now it's done. So you're left.
What if he gets The Rock? What if he gets The Rock?
I seriously doubt that would. I mean,
I know. I'm totally kidding.
If you got The Rock, it'd be unbelievable. And now, do I think that's even like in the
that would
thoughts? No.
That would fill Wembley Stadium.
Oh, of course. What if he got Stone Cold? Yeah, well, he wouldn't be Stone Cold. You'd have to be like you'd have to be Steve Williams. But those people I think are too loyal to WWE and they have too much tied in with them.
You know what? We should start a rumor on this podcast to see how far stretching our podcast strength is.
The Rock.
The Rock is coming to Wembley, according to two podcasters.
The Rock didn't want to do WrestleMania against Roman Reigns because he was holding out for the Wembley show.
Yeah, let's start that rumor. All right, Chris. Well, we've filibustered enough. I am so excited for people. I cannot wait to get the feedback on this. Why don't you go ahead and tell them a little bit more about your interview with Rip Rogers?
Yes, Rip Rogers, as we talked about earlier, worked for Central States. He talks about some matches in 1983, but he was really full-time in Central States in 1987. Those were the dying last few years of Bob Geigel's. He was still with the NWA at that point. Then he would move on to the WWA, Bob Geigel. But Rip Rogers talks about his time in Kansas City, talks about all the main players that were here during that time, and gives like a very frank conversation about each one of them. And then he also talks about what $240 will get you back in the day. And let's see what else. And he gives his thoughts on Shane McMahon's working punch, plus much, much more. Rip Rogers.
All right, guys, I can't wait for you to listen to this. This is Chris Goff's interview with Rip Rogers. And again, please, I can't stress this enough. This is not for everybody. If you have young children, kids, all that kind of stuff, get them out of the room. This is not the interview for them. And we'll see you on the other side after this dynamic interview with Rip Rogers.
It's the worst territory.
I am joined now by the hustler Rip Rogers, who was in the Central States in 1987. But I want to talk about everything about Rip Rogers. And Rip, thanks for joining me.
Oh, you're welcome.
So this podcast is called The Worst Territory in the World because a friend of ours, Jim Cornette, and Ric Flair and others have sort of really buried Kansas City over the years for multiple reasons, but I do it tongue-in-cheek because I'm from Kansas City, and people that were in Kansas City loved. You might as well say Bulldog Bob Brown was, Ric Flair. Yeah. It didn't matter.
Yeah.
So
hey, you got, if you're from there and you grew up with that, you'd fight to the finish for your fucking territory, for your fucking heroes. Whether it be Rufus R. fucking Jones or Bob Geigel, Bulldog fucking Bob Brown, guys that homesteaded there and they stayed there for 25 fucking years, and they might go away in the summer and work the Maritimes or work Calgary or something, or Winnipeg or fucking Vancouver. Then they'd come on back to Kansas City and Geigel take fucking care of you. You got to remember, there's no population in the Midwest.
It's true.
You got a bunch of farmers and shit. It ain't like you're in the big city and you got 1 million people within an hour's drive each way total. You ain't got, there's just not people out there. And then Geigel had shitty TVs, weak TVs on weak stations. And then when Vince come in, he just destroyed every fucking territory there goddamn was. And you didn't have to be any fucking good to work for WWE. A lot of times they'd take guys that wasn't any fucking good because then they want a threat to somebody. And then they could make a star at anybody with the power of television. You put you on TV and you could be, you squash people for a year fucking straight on TV and you could be goddamn Hulk Hogan. It's all, the wrestling's irrelevant. Vince McMahon changed the wrestling business. The wrestling business ain't wrestling anymore. And he'll tell you it's not wrestling. And he destroyed all the territories. And it went from about 800 guys in North America making a living at this shit to fucking just the fucking chosen few. And Vince can make a star out of anybody. Or you got to be, hey, let's take another second generation wrestler. Hey, I know. Let's have my daughter run this. And Shane come by and he can tear his quad or tear his knee up or whatever, and he's 50 years old acting like he's 18, hadn't been trained, not in goddamn fucking shape, and you knew he was going to hurt. And when he got hurt, everybody fucking laughed and said yay. And if he was a quarterback, if Patrick Mahomes, if Vince on the team, goddamn Patrick Mahomes, he'd sit out the Super Bowl so fucking Shane could start.
Well, Shane was my first real boss when I worked at WWE. I worked for him under New Media, and he's quite the athlete, really. But yes,
wait a minute. What is quite the athlete?
You could tell, so maybe if you're going to hold me to semantics, let me rephrase it. He was I could tell that he grew up a kid that probably got a ton of shit because his dad was Vince. So you could tell he got really tough and started working on chokeholds and MMA style stuff at an early age. Now, I don't know how he did in football or sports like this, but I felt that Shane was always could handle himself in a fight pretty well.
He throws the worst fucking working punches I've ever seen in my fucking life.
Is that Dr. Tom's fault? I don't know who trained him. I don't know who worked.
No. Here's the thing. Now, if I got a job with him, how was it? Oh, Shane, he's the greatest ever. All you give a shit is about collecting a fucking check because it's a week you don't have to work at McDonald's or fucking Walmart.
Sure.
That's all it is. It's kissing fucking ass and trying not to get and hiding and trying not to get fucking fired.
Yeah, well, I got fired by his sister, so I don't know if you have any experience with her, but she wasn't my favorite either. Let's go back to Central States for a minute. When you started in Central States, before you went there, I believe 1987 was your first time there. What did you think of Kansas City when you heard you were going there, when you decided to make the jump there?
Well, it was what I did was I'd worked a second stint for Ron Fuller. The first time was at Southeastern. I was there 11 months. And then that was in late 83, 84. Then I went work for Ole. Then I went down to work for fucking Tampa. But in Kansas City, when I was working for Dick the Bruiser, when I was starting, I remember he had me work Danville, Illinois, drive all night to work Kansas City TV in the morning, St. Joe TV that night, then come back and worked against Flair and Dick Murdoch for Sam Muchnick from the Wrestling from the Chase.
Yeah.
And at the time I was teaching school, and on a good week I'd make $125. No, $129. Then the next week I'd have to pay teacher's dues. I'd make $119. So I was coming back from that, and I made $240 for the weekend, right? And are you triple X or are you PG or what?
Oh no, we're whatever. This. It doesn't. You can curse all you want.
Okay, okay. So I made $240 for the weekend. I got my dick sucked 3 different fucking times by 3 different fucking bitches. And I said, what in the fuck? I went right back to Union City, Indiana, where I was a fucking high school teacher and a football coach. And I told Fish Lips, the principal, I said, hey, take my sick days, my personal leave days, and after that, I'll come in Monday. I'll work Monday through Thursday, and I'm out of here. So that was how I was going in the early days.
Well, you are quite the wrestling character. I got to be honest. I've never met you, but I really wish I had. I really do.
I'm about the most real, most over motherfucker, and you can't fucking break me no matter fucking what. I'm 69 motherfucking years old. I fucking tore my fucking shoulder up Monday trying to cut the grass. You know how you pulling the fucking trying to start the son of a bitch.
Sure.
So I had and it's something popped. I could hardly lift my fucking arm. So I got a knee that ain't mine, 2 hips that ain't mine, neuropathy in my motherfucking feet. You fucking name it, but I was at the gym 3 hours today.
Oh, I've seen you're still in tremendous shape. I will give you that, man. You are you look great.
And the thing about it is I don't take steroids. Fuck them. I told them all, y'all. Can you imagine it getting in 12 contests in fucking 18 months?
No.
Clean and winning 2 and saying fuck you to everybody, and all the guys getting mad because they're on the shit and I tell them about it and they're fucking losers.
Wow.
And they're all fucking dead fucking soon. They got fucking bitch tits, and whatever you do, it don't fucking count because you're fucking cheating. Fuck you all.
You ran into a Central States guy that's one of my best friends a couple weeks ago named Ace Steele.
Oh yeah, I like Ace right a fucking way.
Great
right,
guy.
Told me. Now I sort of got dementia. I can't remember shit.
Okay.
Then I'll fucking names and not a face, etc. Or guys fucking change, right?
Yeah.
But no, he was over with fucking me. He said, I said, you're fucking over with me because he did something to the fucking little fucking buckaroos of the Tony Khan little kiddie show out there. So he was fucking over with me. He said he was in OVW, but he was in a different class or whatever. So
yeah, he's a great guy, and I hope he'll get another job in wrestling someday soon.
No, I think you.
Yeah, he's a good dude. But I know I've talked with you briefly about Bob Geigel, but coming into Kansas City, what did you think of Bob Geigel as a person, as a promoter?
Well, I knew what I was getting into. I never really went into different territories as far as financial decisions. That's how stupid I was. I just wanted to work. I wanted to learn their booking system. I wanted to learn what they highlighted in their area. I wanted to see what I could fucking steal and take somewhere else. And I wanted to, like I just finished working with Fuller, and as soon as I come in, I shot an angle with Adrian Street. I worked with him for 6 straight months in all the fucking clubs except like 3 days.
Yeah.
And then when I got done, as soon as I got done with that, I told Ron Fuller, I said, Ron, I'm out of here. It was the thing I did with Adrian was so fucking good, and I couldn't top it. It wasn't about the fucking money. It was how everything fucking clicked. And then I just, I had met Geigel. It's like when I worked for Ole and McMahon stole the TV time slot. So Ole got the championship wrestling from Georgia in the morning. And I remember Geigel would come in and Jarrett would bring some guys in and Crockett would bring some guys in and stuff like that. But I known Geigel from then. And then because I remember Geigel, he didn't know what the fuck to do. He had lost he had lost so much goddamn money, and he said, I want you to book this. I said, well, I ain't firing nobody. So that's it. And I said, and I don't go in the office. No, I do it in my fucking head and at fucking home. And I said, I'm not interested in your opinion because because you've tried everything you fucking thought you knew or whatever, and none of it worked. And he just sat there and said, yeah. I said, you're trying so hard you can't think straight. You got to get back to basics. You got to give guys, make them fucking characters and leave the fucking rest to me. So I remember I worked with Brody 4 weeks in a row.
How was that?
And, he didn't like me. He didn't like anybody that was in the office. He was a great talent. And so the first night we worked some kind of count out, and he beat me up for 20 minutes, right? And I just walked back in. He was fucked up on dope. And I said, I always heard you were pretty smart. And I said, he said, you beat me out there for 20 fucking minutes. You couldn't beat me. People were starting to cheer for me because you look like a bully out there. I said, you're a fucking about 6'6" or whatever, and has the gimmick boots on. Tremendous physique, tremendous fucking character, and you couldn't beat me. So you made yourself look like an idiot. He just fucking stared at me, right?
Yeah.
But I worked 4 weeks total with him. And then I worked with Ox Baker. And then I drew more money with Ox because Ox just shut up and did what I told him to do. And then Geigel couldn't stand it because he was wanting a shit and get it match. I said, it ain't fucking happening. I said, this is our fucking roster. Deal with it. And then so Geigel worked an angle, and I beat up Ox and handcuffed him. He's fucking gassed, and Geigel makes a comeback on me, and I rip his shirt off, and I worked against Geigel for 4 weeks. And then the last fucking week, he slid Mike George into the fucking angle, etc. Then we had a good house in Thanksgiving, and then he was stiffing everybody on the fucking money. He didn't have any. He had a great love for wrestling. So,
yeah, he seemed like, so I met Geigel when I was just a teenager. He was,
okay.
At that point, he was running security at this big racetrack up here that we had, a horse track.
Was Bulldog there too?
It was Bulldog, Rufus, Mike George, and Geigel, all of them.
Fucking lovely.
It was great because as a kid and your parents and everyone knew him, so it was like a meet and greet every day.
Right. That's fucking awesome. That's like, I love working with fucking Rufus. I know how fucking limited he is.
Sure.
Bulldog, and I used to ride with the Bulldog. I went to the Maritimes 4 times, and a couple times the Bulldog was out there. So I made every trip with the fucking Bulldog. And I'd fucking get in the girls' back seat, and I'd soil all his fucking linens and shit. He just had the fucking shit back.
Well, he sounds like quite the character, because Geigel would tell me that he would have him over for Thanksgiving, and Bulldog Bob Brown would just shit on everything on the table. He would just say, like, this is horrible turkey, the cranberry sucks.
Yeah, you're right, but the thing about it is, it's all a rib.
Sure.
Bob's ribbing. It's just to get you all wound up about it.
But he was a great smartass.
Oh yeah, he's fucking The Bulldog was a good fucking ribber, and then I love working with Mike George. Tremendous fucking talent.
Yeah. So do you think? So Harley Race used to tell me that Mike George could have been a star anywhere if he just decided to leave home, and he didn't.
Yes, because I remember he got a real good push for Watts. But Mike he was a big, tough bastard. Everything on him looked fucking legit. He was a fucking light as a feather in the fucking ring. He was a real fucking pro. So he was really good.
He is still actually working for like security for a casino here in Kansas City, Kansas still. Not just a few blocks away from Memorial Hall still. And so I talk to him pretty regularly, and he's still doing good. He's a great guy.
Yeah. I remember then, so it was Thanksgiving night, and they always drew on Thanksgiving night no matter what. I said, Bob, my fucking check bounced. He said, don't worry about it. I'll get you tonight. I said, okay. So he snuck out the back door with the money, right?
Yeah.
So I just fucking laughed. The next day, we go somewhere. He says, "Where you at?" I said, "Oh, fuck, I'm about an hour from my house in Indiana." He said, "What?" I said, "Oh, no, you lied to me. You lied to me." I said, "Don't ever lie to me. I can handle the truth, but don't lie to me." And you lied to me. So, fuck you. I'm not the bad guy, you are. You know.
Sure. I mean, yeah, if you stick up for yourself, you have to in that situation.
Yeah.
So Ox Baker was from Sedalia, Missouri, and I have some old footage.
Coal Camp.
Oh, he's from Coal Camp. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But Sedalia's a bigger city, right?
Yeah, that's a bigger city.
Yeah. So he says Sedalia, but he said, but it's really Coal Camp.
Coal Camp is a very small lake on the way to the lake city. Yeah.
Okay. And he lived. There was 3 houses in a row. It was like him and his wife, and then like maybe his parents and or brother or what. Anyway, there was 3 houses, like 3 identical houses in a row, and they were all like the Bakers.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
I have some footage that I used in a documentary that I did on Kansas City Wrestling, and it's when he was basically introduced in Kansas City, black and white stuff, and he came out of the crowd, and he was wearing a baseball hat, and he didn't have any facial hair, and he was wearing his big, thick glasses, and they introduced him, and he got worked in that way. And it's amazing what that guy did in his entirety of his career, both in wrestling and Hollywood and everything else. Is that shocking to you at all?
The what now?
Is that shocking to you at all that he had such a career?
No, that motherfucker could fucking sing. Jesus Christ. What a fucking voice. And if you've seen him, he's such a fucking character. Just looking at him, old walrus face with the fucking shaved head, how big he fucking was. He was just a total fucking gimmick. And then he would try it, whenever he tried and bully somebody, all you had to do was stand up to him and he'd cower like a little fucking kid. Oh, I was just kidding, you know. Foxy Oxy. He was fucking great.
Hey, but I just came to mind because another guy who was very big but would probably do that. Did you ever have any run-ins with another guy that was in the Central States named the Russian Brute?
Now, who was that?
I don't remember his name. So if you did, if you would know him, he was in the dying days of the AWA, and he lived around here. And I just didn't know if you had known him. I don't know his shoot name, but
I remember the hardest I've ever been kicked in my life was working TV for fucking Geigel when I was just starting, and Alexis Smirnoff kicked me in the chest so fucking hard. And then I remember Murdoch fucking potatoed me. I thought he broke my motherfucking jaw. But then again, I'm thinking I was so rotten. I wasn't even trained. I bullshit my way in and started learning.
Oh, wow.
That's why I was talking to Murdoch. I told him, and he says, and I said, you fucking asshole. We worked the fucking Chase, and you busted me, you potatoed me in the jaw. He goes, I remember you. You moved. Just a fucking, right? And I said, I had black hair and an afro. He goes, yeah, I remember you. I said, you lied, motherfucker. He just fucking laughed. One night we was working in Dayton, Ohio, and I was supposed to take the brain buster, right? He said, fuck that. We're doing a roll-up finish. I ain't beating you with no fucking brain buster. You're too fucking good. I just started fucking laughing. And it was just, I just fucking loved the rest.
Oh, yeah, you can tell. You can tell you love it. Every interview I've ever seen you do, you're obviously a professional wrestling fan through and through.
Oh, I remember, God, in the early 70s, I go down to the pipe shop in downtown Seymour, and they used to have, I bet they had about 6, 7, 8 magazines out. And I'd get all them fucking magazines and buy them all. And I used to have, when I went to Cauliflower Alley Club about 5 years ago, and when I went there was a flood in my basement, and my sump pump didn't work. I lost everything I ever had since I was born.
Oh, man.
To a flood and that fucking, whatever you call that black shit, you know? But anyway, I lost every fucking thing in my scrapbook, every picture I had wrestling, all the fucking programs, all my fucking tapes, DVDs, you fucking name it. Lost fucking, God damn.
Horrible. Wow.
Yeah. Such is life.
Could you imagine if that happened to Jim Cornette? That would be a really bad, he'd probably go on a rampage somewhere.
Well, you know, he'd come out and Yeah, I've seen Jimmy beat out the windows with baseball bats.
I love
So-
the story about when they made fun of his car getting like destroyed on Raw, and then he went home for like 2 weeks or didn't talk to anybody from the office because it was his shoot car, I believe, that got his the back windshield rolled into and broken. Did you ever work with Colonel De Beers, another Kansas City guy from St. Joe?
The fucking Colonel. Well, he was trained by the ref. What was the ref's name? The old
Sonny
Carney?
Myers?
Yeah, Sonny Myers. Yeah, but Sonny. No, I was with the Colonel out with Buddy Rose in Portland.
Okay.
So yeah, the Colonel was over with me. Colonel De Beers, Ed Wiskowski, Derek Draper. How many different other names did he fucking have? I think he's living in Arizona now. I think he was still playing competitive old time softball or whatever a few years ago.
Wow. Yeah, he had quite the career. He could never have that gimmick nowadays, but I was glad that he did then.
Oh yeah. Well, nobody could have any gimmick in wrestling. A heel would be allowed to get heat and say anything.
So okay. So with that in mind, and you talked about how it's all moves now, which is true. My argument with my friends that talk about wrestling and stuff is like, when I was on the writing team, I couldn't write anything controversial because they wouldn't allow the fans, the TV, whoever, critics wouldn't allow the heel to get any, fire at the beginning because they get pissed off. And I'm like, you got to wait till the end of the storyline because the baby face wins all the time, but they don't let it breathe enough before they get offended by everything. So I don't even know, besides the powerful guy like holding down people, it's really hard to do any kind of sexual angle, racial angle, nationality angle without someone getting offended. So I don't know what else you can really do.
In any movie, you got a good guy, bad guy. The first step is to have the bad guy bigger than the good guy.
Sure.
Then the bad guy cheats. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to talk shit. It's good versus evil is all it is. And we've gotten away from that.
We have. I feel like people don't like they don't like the heel to ever get any heat anymore. It without somebody getting offended. I don't know. I can rant about that all day, but it's really hard to have any kind of angles that were great when I grew up could not be used today, which sucks. But
Yeah.
Did you? Sorry, go ahead.
Then again, anything old is new again because the new audience hasn't seen nothing but shit for how many years?
20.
That's like, you know who Serena Deeb is?
Yes.
I trained her for years, and I trained her as a guy to work with all the guys, and I'd have the guys work like a girl. I says, okay, now you're both girls. Now you're both fucking guys. Now you're a guy that's 200, now even though you're smaller, you're working you got to learn to work every situation there is, so you're never flustered. You're always miles ahead of fucking everybody. And everybody I did had hour Broadways. Some guys could do 90. Had two guys had over 2 hour fucking matches called in the fucking ring, and it made sense. And I taught I had over 70 people go to WWE, etc. But they're not. I'm not talking about fucking Brock and Cena and Batista and stuff like that. I'm talking about guys that come in and start in the beginners class, like Mondo, the Spirit Squad, like Johnny Jeter, the Spirit Squad.
Sure.
Like Santino Marella from fucking Canada. They all lived over them cheap ass apartments, would have 6 guys in a goddamn fucking room, and had the time of their motherfucking lives. JTG, he was right in there. All these guys, and they got runs. Some of them had 10-year runs in WWE, and they came from the OVW beginners fucking class.
Oh, you're known as obviously one of the best. Like Tom Pritchard is one of my really good friends, and him, there's a handful of guys known as the best trainers in the last 30 years.
Dr. Tom, what I do, Dr. Tom can explain everything in detail. I'm like a fucking 9th-year-old cussing at you. And style. and I can make you fucking good. Now, Tommy, he'll stroke your ego and really explain it. I said, well, God damn it, do this, you know. And we got completely different fucking styles, but I'm doing like to push you. A coach is supposed to, I'm supposed to do my best to make you better than I ever was. I made all the fucking mistakes and I know what the answers are. And I'm going to tell you what they are, but you're not going to understand them until you think what I'm telling you is bullshit. But you're going to see after about 10 times of failure that what I tell you is the goddamn fucking truth.
Yeah, you remind me, in college basketball, you remind me of a Bobby Knight type guy.
Did you say Bobby Knight the same time I did?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, you're from Indiana, so I guess that's going to happen. A few more guys I wanted to ask you about from Kansas City days. What about a guy that died prematurely, but I thought I don't, by his look and in the ring, I thought he was going to be something big one day. Dave Peterson. Yeah.
Okay. Fucking great. Dave fucking see how I fucking you just start talking and I said Bobby Knight, I said Dave Peterson, DJ Peterson. Yeah, he had the look. He was good in the ring. I don't really know if he could talk much. I haven't really seen a lot of interviews with him, but when I see old footage of him when I was younger, I was like, who is this guy? Like, why wasn't he in the big leagues? But he was right.
He died in a motorcycle wreck, I believe. Yeah.
Or I knew it was some kind of wreck. Yeah, with the vehicle. I couldn't remember what it was. So
did you ever you talked about Sonny Myers earlier. Did you ever meet up with him in Kansas City? Did you ever have him ref one of your matches where he would count with his foot?
No, but Uncle Lubitsch used to do that a lot of times he would do that in Dallas. And then some guys would get down, but they wouldn't count with their foot or their hand. They would just count. They would go 1. I said, lazy, get your ass down here. Then now I'm 69 years old. Now all of a sudden I understand they can't get up and fucking down.
No, I'm sure there was a reason for it, but I have some footage of Sonny Myers doing that. And it just makes me laugh every time I see it.
Oh, Sonny was funny because he was an old carny, right?
Yeah.
He's fucking carny and he's talking the shit in the fucking ring. And there's nothing better than having a good time in the fucking ring. Fuck, you have some fucking matches go 30 minutes, not break a fucking sweat, and people wanting to kill your motherfucking ass. It's just fucking awesome.
Did you ever work for Gus Karras?
No, I always heard the stories, and I always implied about them, but he wasn't there.
Okay. Yeah, obviously Harley owes a lot to him. Did you have I needed to ask you about the St. Joe was the midget capital of the world for many years, thanks to Lord Littlebrook.
Oh, yeah.
Did you have a lot of one of his sons is still alive, goes by Little Cato, but did you have any one of my friends told me that on a Thanksgiving, I think it was 87, had to have been, you teamed up with Little Tokyo in some kind of tag match, and he said it stole the show that night. I didn't know if that was a regular thing, how much you worked with the midgets, or how much interaction you had with them.
Well, that's like when I used to be a part owner in ICW in the 80s with Randy Savage, his dad, his brother, Ronnie Garvin, Bob Root, Bob Orton Jr. So, and then we used to get all our midgets from Littlebrook,
Sure.
We get the Lula, they come in for 2 weeks, and the midgets would come in for 2 weeks. And I can give you violence or I can give you whatever. You got to know how to work the first match through a main event and don't overstep your goddamn fucking bounds. And that's what guys don't understand. Know your fucking role. It's like baseball. I'm the leadoff hitter. No matter what, I get on base. The second batter is either bunt the guy to second or hit behind him to get him to fucking second base. Then we got our third and fourth hitters to drive that son of a bitch in. Know your fucking roles and everything. And in wrestling, guys, I remember remember Rick McCord. He was a good worker. We had been nice.
Yes.
He owns a limousine. I'm going to be out in for Herb Simmons.
Sure.
In March or May 13th, he's got a big.
He's got a big show over there near St. Louis. Yeah.
I was just in the one in Indianapolis here. This was last week. It was Friday, Saturday. So then I'm coming in for Herb on the 13th. Yeah, that's when it is. What was I fucking talking about? God damn.
Herb was a big. He's obviously a disciple of Mushnick and Larry Matysik and all those guys. Yeah.
But yeah, I worked St. Louis for we had the last show in what not the Checkerdome. What was the other one?
The Kiel Center. Kiel. Yeah.
Brad Armstrong, the last show in the Kiel, I remember.
Okay.
And Brad Armstrong was so fucking good.
So God. Dr. Tom, that was one of his best friends, and he was obviously shattered when he died.
And Dr. Tom and Brad, they were best friends.
Yeah, and so everyone, it's so funny. Every good worker says Brad Armstrong was one of their favorite workers.
Oh yeah, yeah. All the Armstrongs, they had all those boys, and they were all really good workers. And anytime you have a lot, they were all different little characters. And when you have too many of them in your second generation, you know about the vices of the world more than a guy that's straight going in.
Of course.
I was a fucking nerd going in. So, and I wasn't a drinker, a smoker, a drugger, or whatever. I was just a fat kid, legit athlete, playing sports, high school, college, and then we got in. Me and Randy Savage lived together 4 years.
Wow.
So then we had all the weights in the fucking house, and then we saw Kevin Sullivan on Memphis in a physique contest, and he says that's what we're doing. So we started pushing each other, and then we ended up hating each other because he beat me in the first one, and he never beat me again. And after I hard enough to put him over, right?
Competitive, very competitive.
Yeah. Yeah, and he was competitive, whether it was push-ups, running backwards, walking on your fucking head, no matter what. Everything was a fucking contest, and which is sort of good and sort of fucking bad,
No, you're right. And lastly, I don't know how much you had because I don't think you spent much time at all in Kansas City then, 1987. But just your thoughts on Mr. Kansas City, Harley Race. Did you spend much time around him?
No, Harley was gone.
Did you? Harley, maybe subsequent to him, did you see him in WCW? I mean, did you have any friendship with him at all?
Yeah, I remember when I was in the fucking shower, and he come in with that. You have that zip gun, the zap gun, or whatever.
Yeah, taser type thing. Yeah.
And he's trying to act like he's going to electrocute me, right? Oh, damn, Harley was the man's man, And that's all there is fucking to it. Like he was like the fucking wrestling god. No bullshit with him. Yeah. I remember him fucking slamming Andre.
Yeah.
And
before Hogan, yes.
And Harley was in the ring, you never really thought he was hurt, no matter what. That he was just luring you in for the fucking kill.
Yeah, he was obviously known as one of the toughest guys, if not arguably the toughest guy ever in wrestling. People will say Haku is another one, but Harley's definitely up there. And he's Mr. Kansas City. Him and Bob Geigel, those are the two people that most everyone sort of associates here. But well, Rip, it's been great getting to talk to you. I'm really have enjoyed my conversation. You were one hell of a guy.
Well, cool. That's when I was working with Bob. He was 63 years old.
Yeah, how was that? Because Bob, he still kept in pretty good shape. He was a very good athlete.
Yes, and I remember going, now when I was in Kansas City, I was 33. Yeah, I was 33 years old. And I'm treating him like he's a normal guy, right? And I'm just going full fucking bore. Hitting him fucking hard and everything, right?
Yeah.
I said, come on, let's go. And he never backed down. He never said he was fucking tired. He was busting his fucking ass out there, and he was the one fucking paying for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I've talked to his daughter. He could have played NFL, but wrestling paid better, so he did that.
That's like I used to ride with Ernie Ladd a lot. when I was working for Watts, and he was talking about, and I talked with Wahoo about it. I remember Dick the Bruiser when he was playing pro football, and he was making like $3,000 to $3,500. Of course, you only got paid during the season, right?
Sure.
Then you had to fucking get a fucking job, and all these guys, no matter what, the wrestling paid better than the fucking pro football did.
pretty amazing to look back now, but when people are getting $500 million here in Kansas City, Patrick Mahomes, but
yeah. And I guess if the money wasn't there, they wouldn't offer it to you. And this franchise is still making fucking money.
Yeah.
So what the fuck, you know?
No, it's there now, man. Definitely. Mostly with TV, the NFL has it down. I mean, they can get the because of their schedule and the small amount of games. It's a big, heavy. It's easy to see why it's the best sport in America. So.
Well, it's like baseball when you got 162 fucking games, you can't get too excited about something.
Marathon. It's a total marathon. You're right.
And remember when the fucking what's his face's brother, Peyton Manning's brother,
Eli.
Yeah, it's like Eli. Remember they had teams that were basically even going in, and they made the fucking Super Bowl, right?
Yeah, beat Brady twice.
Yeah, they just fucking. Football is just fucking now, excuse me now, but you know how we always fuck the games up. Now on every pass play, they're looking for a flag, it seems like.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Over penalty, yeah.
Yeah, it used to be kill the other team's quarterback and you'll win. Now they don't want you to touch the quarterback because he's the most marketable player and that's who they're paying the most. And it's, well, don't hit him. I don't.
That's why it's hard to compare even Brady or Mahomes to someone that played in the 60s because it's just completely different.
Yeah, I'm a Bart Starr, Johnny Unitas guy,
We had Len Dawson.
I like the AFL more than the NFL, and I like the ABA more than the fucking NBA. Because they're the ones that they would change the fucking rules, and they had the better players, but they were more convicts. And it was awesome.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, Len Dawson, you talk about, we had him, and he would end up, he would have to get a second job, ended up being like a sportscaster in Kansas City for years.
Well, for years, when I was a kid growing up, this is before the Andy Metz division, what was that, 74, something like that?
Yeah.
In all the sports, the guys would get jobs as soon as the season was over. They all sold cars, sold insurance, or whatever because they had to fucking eat.
Sure. Pretty amazing how it's changed.
Now, how old are you? You sound like a fucking youngster.
I am 45.
I wish I was 45.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to say that too one day. I wish I was 25, but.
Yeah, well, everybody wishes they was. Well, when you're 25, you're sort of stupid, but you don't.
Yeah, I wish I had today's knowledge and I'm back to 25. Yeah.
Yeah, well, everybody does that. Be fucking destroyed because you could be a 25-year-old with knowing much because then you're really fucking dangerous.
That's true. Well, Rip, thank you very much for joining me. I'll have to do this again sometime. It was great to meet you, man.
All right, just give me a ring and then remind me whatever, blah, 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 because I can't remember nothing.
Thank you very much, man.
All right, have a good one.
You too.
It's the worst territory.
All right, welcome back to the worst territory in the world. And I'm grinning from ear to ear because I can just see the open mouth expressions at the people at home that were just like, what did we just witness? But man, I'm telling you, in between the F-bombs, there was some really actually great nuggets. Obviously, a professional wrestling, Rip Rogers knows a lot. It's been there, done that. He's just a straight shooter. And that's not something you come across a lot in wrestling. He's not gunning for a Hall of Fame ring. He just tells it as it is. And I think that's what made that interview so dynamic.
When I used to work in sports broadcasting full time, my favorite people to interview were the older guys that did not give a crap about anything anymore. Right. They weren't worried about their next job. They weren't worried about their Social Security. They weren't worried about their health insurance at this point. The guy that comes to mind quickest that I love to interview is Dick Vermeil. And he didn't curse as much as Rip Rogers, but he definitely said things that you would not hear a regular coach say in their, when they're 35, 45 years old. So I love it when guys hit that point in their life where they're like, you know what, I'm done kissing ass. And maybe Rip Rogers was like this from the beginning. It sounds like he might have been.
Yeah.
Or he was hiding it for a while until he could have a little bit more of a foothold in the sport. But I love that he was a lifelong fan. I love that he has so much passion for it still. He still loves it like me and you and everybody else listening. He wants it to do well. He's pissed that they're not doing a better job, which most of us are anyway. I don't know how Rip Rogers' podcast isn't up there with Jim Cornette, because I feel like anything with Rip Rogers on a weekly basis would be funny. But yeah, there were several times where I had to, basically mute my mic because I had to laugh to the side, because like he was so entertaining to me that especially like when he said what he used for his $240.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm outside working on a chicken coop, and my father-in-law looks over at me. He goes, "What in the heck are they talking about?" And I was like, well, this guy Rip, went into it. But yeah, what a great interview.
Man. It was so much fun, and I hope to have him on again. I want him to be on again at some point, just to talk about anything. He could talk about drying paint. I don't care. It'd be hilarious. But thank you to Rip Rogers, and we hope to see him again soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Rip, for joining us. That was an amazing interview, Chris. It is that time, but this time you don't get to pick your menu again. I am going to give you just one item, and this week's item is Easter eggs.
Okay.
Goff, you are going to reach your hand into the proverbial Easter egg basket. Now, when we talk about Easter eggs on DVDs, movies, all this kind of stuff, it's like threads, maybe a little something that, hidden messages, something that people didn't know. So in that vein, what do you think is a good Easter egg and or the best underrated match in WWF history? Wow. So something that people don't talk about. It's not like it's not the Hell in the Cells, but it is just a match that you feel can define, a period, a moment, or whatever.
Gosh, I'm trying to, I mean, if I would go back to something like that, it would go back to my, probably more my childhood. Some of the matches that I thought were, I thought, man, like the first Royal Rumble on pay-per-view was a huge match to me. And it gets talked about not as much because the eventual winner, Big John Studd, was around for another like a cup of coffee, and then he was gone. So of course, looking back, it's like, why the hell did Vince put it on Big John Studd? But he obviously had higher hopes, and I guess John didn't really want to stick around for what he wanted to do. But that match and that pay-per-view in general, I feel like doesn't get a ton of love because of the Big John Studd win. But it had, I believe, I'm trying to remember the whole card. That was the Rick Rude Ultimate Warrior pose down, which also, he no-sold the like spray to the face, which was dumb too. But and there's another tag match in that was really great. I love that pay-per-view and I don't think it gets a lot of love. I also think growing up that all the first 5 or so WrestleManias, or 6, I'd say, got a bunch of publicity, and then you went into what I consider somewhat of a darker period from like 7 to 12. Like I feel like those didn't get nearly the rub that 1 through 6 did, and so as a teenager, I had to go back and watch WrestleMania 7 and 8 to really appreciate, mostly 8, if I could say that. That's the one where Flair and Macho, and that was like, I don't think that, I mean, because it was the double main event with Sid and Hogan, right? And was it Hogan and Sid?
Yes, it was.
It was Macho and Flair, which was by far the best match on the card.
Oh, and by far.
I feel like that doesn't get as much love as some of the other WrestleMania main events because, I don't know, business was sagging then. Flair was sort of an outsider to the WWF world. Randy was, getting close to wrapping up his in-ring career for WWE at least. And I don't know. Those are my first come to mind. Like, what do you have?
So one of the ones that came to my mind was, okay, and I was in the in my dark ages during this period, it was probably actually maybe when you were employed. So you can tell me if this match rings a bell to you if you were employed at that time. But I was hitting the bar a lot, so I wasn't watching a lot of wrestling. But the first match that came to my mind in the pantheon of ruthless aggression, or kind of when violence was at a peak, I watched this match a couple of years ago and was completely floored. Jaw was on the floor. It was insane. Shane McMahon and Kurt Angle.
Oh, the King of the Ring.
Dude. I was like, oh, this is, I think I texted my brother and I said, have you seen this match? And he was like, I don't think so. I was like, that match is one of the most brutal matches I've ever seen. Death match or otherwise. Like, it was unreal brutality, but it was a really good match. Like, and I don't think, people did talk about it, but I don't think it gets as much love as it should, because Shane was nuts in that match for taking some of those bumps that he did. Like,
so I had to defend Shane this week, as you heard me talk to Rip Rogers.
Yes.
he thinks Shane, he does not have high regard for Shane McMahon. No. But Shane is the last person that wants to take, I know this seems sort of hypocritical, because what I'm going to say is, he is not the kind of guy that wants to take any shine off anybody else on the roster, but he also understood that being a quote unquote McMahon meant something on the card, especially in the Attitude Era. It was like a huge thing. If your last name was McMahon, you're going to be in a main event type level spot. So he would do like he got known for incredible bumps. And so, of course, he always had to one-up himself, falling off like the Titantron or whatever.
Oh, my God.
But that match with Kurt Angle, yes, I was working there, because that was right before I went to the writing team, because that was King of the Ring 2001. And that's when, when Kurt Angle kept suplexing him into the glass that wouldn't break.
Yes.
And Shane took it 2 or 3 times before it actually went down. He ended up I kept worrying that he was going to hit the glass and fall and hit his head, because it was just so brutal. And knowing Shane, he's going to break the glass. And then afterwards, Vince McMahon was so pissed, because the person that was supposed to put it, I can't remember the story now, I don't want to say the wrong thing, but they thought that the one Kurt kept suplexing in was the breakaway glass, and it was not. It was a different panel. And so I don't remember if Vince was mad at the person that didn't put the right panel in the right place, or Shane and Kurt not sort of knowing which one to go to. But either way, it was supposed to break away, and it didn't. And Vince was pissed that night, of course, because he was worried about his son, and had continual bashing into it by Kurt. But that is a brutal match to watch, especially that part.
I was really blown away actually by both of their performances, honestly, but especially Shane. And I was like, man, people don't really talk, because Shane's done so many, like you said, the crazy Titantron bumps and Hell in the Cell bumps with crash pads underneath it, all that other kind of stuff. But I think that was his match. That was his match of like, I can lay it down. And yes, Rip, you're totally right. The worst working punch in the history of professional wrestling.
Like I said, is that Dr. Tom's fault? Because Dr. Tom's the one that helped train him.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I'm joking. It's not Tom's fault. But
and I got to correct you real quick.
Is hard.
I got to correct you real quick, because I looked it up while you were talking about it. 88 was the first Royal Rumble, and it was won by Jim Duggan.
Okay, but that wasn't on pay-per-view. See, the 88 Royal Rumble was on USA Network, and Jim Duggan won that. The first Royal Rumble on pay-per-view was in '89,
and Big John Studd.
Big John Studd, which of course had been big several years before, had sort of went MIA. This was his big return. They had this big pomp and circumstance, and when he won, it was like, it was like no one cared. And then he's gone. So it was like, wow, what? That was like one of Vince's like big bloopers of like pushing someone that really he got nothing out of that win. So. But yes,
that's interesting that Duggan won the one on USA. Like, again, another guy that it kind of never went anywhere.
No, yeah, I mean, he was always just he was like the he was like the bushwhackers of the single division. You know, he was like always there. He had a nice little program with Macho Man as he was King Hacksaw Jim Duggan there for a while, and he took that from Macho.
Oh yeah,
but
I remember that.
And he had some good pay-per-view matches with Demolition. He was in that 6-man, and he had some good stuff. But he was just the perennial, babyface mid-card guy that was always happy, and the kids loved him, and he sold merch, and he's still that today. He still plays the same guy. But
I really thought you were going to choose some demolition matches as because there are some really fine demolition matches that don't get talked about a lot.
Well, it's funny you bring that up, because another reason why I think Royal Rumble 89 is good is because that was the first time they had number 1 was Axe and number 2 was Smash, and they had to go out and fight each other, the first 2 people in the Royal Rumble.
That's right. And I remember that.
So they played the first music, and Howard Finkel and his booming voice introduces Demolition Axe, and then here comes Demolition Smash, and of course everybody's like, well, Ventura's still there, and he's like, well, what are they gonna do? They're gonna fight, aren't they? And so those 2 fought and had to like beat the crap out of each other, because at that point it was everyone was still like gunning to be the winner of this Rumble, man. It was furthering their career, so they weren't going to just sit back and be friendly partners. They were going to fight, and so that was another reason why it made me think of Royal Rumble 89. But Demolition had some great matches. They were a great working tag team.
Great tag team.
I always argue with people, like, I know LOD had the LOD pop and all that, the Road Warrior pop, but Demolition, better working team by far. I don't think they were even comparable. I do think the Powers of Pain were a complete ripoff of LOD. I don't think Demolition was. And
I don't think Demolition was either. Honestly, I don't. I think it was
another good Shane McMahon match that I think's not really underrated necessarily, but I loved him and Vince McMahon. WrestleMania 17, when he did the Van Terminator, he had practiced that for a long time at the studio, and when he was able to connect pillar to pillar like RVD with that trash can on his dad, I mean, it was. I don't know. Like, Shane was a friend of mine then. I loved Shane. He was my boss. I thought he was great. And I thought and if you knew Shane, you knew he wasn't like a huge a-hole. He was not a guy that was like clamoring for fame. He didn't need it. He had plenty of money. His wife is loaded. It didn't matter. He just loved the business so much, and he loved being a part of it in any way. And I don't know, when I hear people laughing about him tearing his quad and stuff, and like I sort of defended him with Rip before Rip just shredded him, but I feel bad because I know the real Shane, and I know that what he really feels about the WWE, and
that was one of the points in the interview where I was like, oh, this is getting like it was almost his attitude towards you was almost confrontational.
He was, because he was saying I didn't want to get fired. That's why I said he's good, because I didn't want to work at McDonald's, which at the time, and I brought up, well, his sister fired me, so but I don't have anything good to say about her. I don't know if you have anything to say about her, Rip, but I don't like her either. And he didn't say anything. But no, Shane, he does not like Shane, and Rip did not take nicely when I said he's a good athlete. As he said, semantics wise, I really meant I think Shane is a pretty tough MFer. I
agree. I agree.
I mean, if you met Shane, you would see that he could probably. I think Shane still at this point could probably beat up most of the locker room. Not Brock and people like that, of course, but I mean the people that I think Shane has been underestimated his whole life in that regard. So but I digress. Shane and Kurt Angle from King of the Ring 2001. That's a good match.
All right, so Chris, why don't you tell us what's coming up? Do we have anything coming down are you working on some exciting interviews?
I'm playing hit and miss with Curtis Hughes, but that's going to come soon, because I would just and also some other guys that I want to talk to. Obviously I want to talk some more NWL. Jeremy Wyatt, Michael Strider, those are 2 guys that I've been like saying, hey, at some point you need to be on here. Dak Draper, talk to the Regal twins. They want to do stuff. And then some other guys that are here for like Central States area stuff. I don't know. Gabe, you definitely weren't around. He was here, but I don't know if you've ever heard of him. But there was this Metro Pro champion. He worked for Harley, went to Japan, big guy. He went by the ring name of Bull Schmidt.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And he is, I've talked with him. I'm going to be talking with him too. He has a lot of insight on Harley, on Japan, on Central States, and sort of that early 2000s period. And I've been trying to track down Trevor Murdoch too, because he's another guy who I've worked with.
Oh man, that would be great.
Over a decade, and he's obviously had a resurgence in his career in the last few years. So I want to get his thoughts on just being a guy from the Midwest, and he's still doing it in his 40s. So that's good stuff. But yeah, plenty of guys that we can talk to through the years of Central States wrestling. And in fact, my friend today said, you need to get the Reverend Slick.
Oh,
of
yeah.
course, he started managing in Kansas City, and there's a long rumor that he is the son of Rufus R. Jones. But I know that you have said that's not true, correct?
Yeah. He is not the biological son of Rufus R. Jones.
Okay.
And I would love to talk. Hey, let me get in on that interview with Slick. I got something to say about his sister. I got something to say about his sister. But yeah, that sounds. I mean, and please go. If we haven't told you so far this episode, go like and subscribe our YouTube page. Also, don't forget to leave us a 5-star rating wherever you're listening to this podcast. Leave us some feedback. Tell us what you like about the podcast. Heck, even tell us what you don't like. And it really helps us get noticed. And also, don't forget to interact with us on our Facebook page. That's what I was.
Yeah, I was going to say. The Facebook page, which is facebook.com/worst wrestling, or look up Worst Territory in the World on Facebook. We're up to about 500 people now.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to I just posted the Casey on the Mat documentary on there, which is on YouTube, and it's been there for years, but I want people to see that, so they can, if you haven't really been around very long, to know some of the early history, the Orville Brown years of the late 40s and all that, through basically the late 80s. That's a pretty good documentary. At least the interviews of the guys that are no longer with us, they're interesting to watch. But yeah, I want to have more interaction with everyone there, and Gabe, you too, on that Facebook group, because I think there's a lot of people that are going to be liking the podcast, and also video clips and other stuff we can put up there that have to do with Central States. Yeah,
I was going to put up a poll here pretty soon and get some more interaction. But yeah, interact with us on all those social media platforms. We really appreciate the support. It's actually been bizarrely amazing that everybody is really, really enjoying this podcast, and how many people have asked me, hey, can I get it? The guys I still work with, how many, can I come on the podcast? Can this person be interviewed? There's a lot of love for us out there. So it's been pretty amazing, Goff. So we'll see what the future holds, but we appreciate all your love and support. Chris, any final thoughts, or are we going to sail into the sunset now?
Yeah, it's time to go. I hope you enjoyed Rip Rogers, and we'll bring him on again. And you guys are now you can take the earmuffs off your kids now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us right here on the Worst Territory in the World. We will see you next time. Bye-bye.
It's the Worst Territory.